Dipnot TV izleyicileri tekrar merhabalar. Biz Dipnot Publishing'in standındayız. Hala Londra Kitap Fuarı'ndayız. Şu anda yanımızda English Pen direktörü Jo Glanville var. English Pen'le ilgili olarak kendisine sorular soracağız. Geldiği için teşekkür edeceğiz. Hello. Thank you very much for your time for us. I'd like to ask you first, could you tell us a bit about English Pen and what you do and who are your members, for example?
It's part of a worldwide organisation. It's the founding centre of a worldwide organisation that promotes literature around the world, but also stands up for freedom of expression around the world. And the membership is writers, publishers, editors, everyone concerned with literature and writing, and journalists as well.
Okay, thank you. As you know, Fazıl Sayı has been given a suspended sentence of 10 months in prison, and this was big news, obviously, for Turkey. And Pen International previously condemned the charges against Fazıl Sayı. English Pen, sorry, my mistake. English Pen previously protested against the charges. And what's your next step now? What are you going to do next about this sentence?
Well, we're very shocked, obviously, about the suspended sentence. You know, we protested. We know there was a lot of protest and concern within Turkey and around the world. But it's as if an example has been made of him. I think when a country actually takes a very famous, eminent figure and slaps this kind of sentence on them, it's significant in itself, but it's also significant because of the chill that it will then send throughout the Turkish population, and it will exercise very sort of bad limits on freedom of speech for everyone in Turkey. So we're concerned to support Fazıl Sayı I assume that he's going to appeal. It hasn't yet been confirmed, as far as I know, that he's going to appeal, but we will support him in that appeal and continue to push for all charges against him to be dropped.
Okay, thank you. Everyone in Turkey at the moment talking about the image and the damage that this caused on the Turkey's image. But there is also, I'm thinking that this is also a symptom as well, and we should talk about that too. What do you think about this? This is in terms of a social problem, and this is just like, is this just like an international faux pas, or is it like a symptom of a social problem? What do you think?
Well, I think there is a very long-standing problem in Turkey around freedom of expression and safeguarding freedom of expression. And I think in some ways, in some small ways, but also in some significant ways, things have improved to a degree. There are certain subjects that people in Turkey can now talk about that previously couldn't have been talked about at all. So there have been some changes, but I think there is still not enough protection for freedom of speech in the law. The laws are far too broad. They can be very sort of widely interpreted by the judiciary. It's very easy for an individual to lodge a case against another individual, whether it's for a vendetta or for politics. And so there is definitely a problem that is very, very long running, and much of the change that is necessary to take place, some of that might very much depend on what happens with the constitution. I think Turkey is at a sort of very pivotal moment. I think there is so much conversation and concern about getting this constitution right, and that might be part of the next step that needs to happen. But I think there is so much concern within Turkey. Turkey is such a vibrant society with so many intellectuals, journalists, activists who are all concerned about this, and something needs to change.
Also, Fazıl Sayı's sentence is an issue of freedom of speech. And do you think freedom of speech is equally distributed amongst the ideologies today, or there can be exceptions accordingly to the subject matter? What can be said within freedom of speech and what can't be said? That's a bit blurred. How do we gauge that?
I think freedom of speech, it's not an absolute right. I mean, even in the United States, that probably has, with the First Amendment, the greatest protection of freedom of speech of any country in the world, even there it is not absolute. So there are always restrictions, there are always limits. But what those limits are and what the red lines are changes from country to country. So in a country like the United Kingdom, it might be particularly around racism. And in a country like Turkey, it might be particularly around the question of religion, for example, or terrorism for every country. And then it's, well, where do you draw the line? So every country, whether it's a sort of totalitarian state or an authoritarian state, democracy, every country has to be vigilant about freedom of expression because it is so subject to what the sort of cultural red lines are, and so one can never be complacent about it.
Thank you very much. Evet, English Pen direktörü Jo Glanville ile konuştuk. Kendisine çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Sağ olun.